Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back. Hope you managed to have a quick cup of tea or coffee or something. In the next session, in this session, what we thought we would look at is some of the new Hermes software services and applications, as well as the platforms, because the platforms, obviously, as a user group meeting, most of you will have a Hermes platform of some kind, but they have gone under an evolution, and I thought it'd be good to have a recap on it in this very short talk. Just as a point of order, I thought it would be good if you could, if we could cover the questions for these next three talks at the end of the third talk, because they're all kind of interrelated. So with that in mind, I'll crack on. So initially, I would like to mention the core product that we would have, the kind of minimum product you would have to be able to run Hermes. And by minimum, it sort of undersells it a little bit, because actually it's a very powerful system. This is the Smart Workstation. It's called Smart because it has a DICOM, a fully capable DICOM management server built into it, with a local storage, reasonable storage to use as a cache, really, if you're doing work on that workstation for a sort of temporary time. We can connect it to gamma cameras, SPECT-CT, also PET-CT, PET-MR, PAX, RIS, you name it. We can connect it to that via DICOM. And it can also send studies and finish reporting screens off to PAX, for example. All the processing on this workstation is done locally, actually on the workstation, and the display can be a single monitor or two monitors or more, just depending to your needs. Now, some of the things that I'm going to mention about this are quite key now to the way the whole system works, because with Hermes, we place a lot of emphasis and a lot of use a lot of capability that are built into the modern graphics cards. So we use the graphics cards parallel processing capacity to accelerate our co-registration, so we can do a full whole body co-registration, rigid co-registration in under half a second, for example, and also in our reconstruction, where we do multiple Monte Carlo simulations for the scatter, for example. Also, our new Affinity Viewer, which we'll cover more tomorrow, our new Affinity Viewer uses the same graphical capabilities, just for example, in real time, for real-time rendering, and we use bicubic interpolation rather than linear interpolation, so you can zoom right in and get smooth images. So we've taken a lot of time in working about how to get the best performance out of the software using the advantages of GPU. So with the Smart Workstations, obviously, we would provide a graphics card that suits. And if you needed to get the kind of best performance out of your graphics, then a physical workstation is really the best thing to have. But of course, we have other solutions that are more suited to a distributed way of working. But the Smart Workstation is compatible with all of those as a standalone DICOM system. Of course, it can be connected to any of the things I'm going to mention in the following slides. So the next level, if you've got a larger department and you want to have several people accessing accessing Hermes applications at one time, is to have a centralized server. So this is the smallest server that we do as an on-premises solution. It's a mini smart application server. So as the name suggests, it has a DICOM server built into it. So like the workstation, it has all the capabilities within this box, but you don't access it directly. You would access it on a thin client basis, sitting at a trust computer or a hospital computer, for example. So all the processing happens on this box. So you don't have to have a particularly powerful computer. You just need to have a reasonable screen. And it works by delivering via thin client using either remote desktop or Citrix, and using the environment that you have within your trust. So that is how we can have a centralized platform where you can have up to 3 concurrent users, typical users. It depends what those users are doing. You may have atypical users that do so much parallel processing all at once, they kind of take up the work of 3. But on a sort of typical clinical basis, it can handle about 3 concurrent users. And of course, because it is on a thin client basis, it means it will work also over a wider area network, provided there's sufficient bandwidth, so you can access this system from home and from off-site for other reasons securely using the VPN facility that you have within your trust. So that is the smallest server that we do. It's just a single box, but it's a very powerful system. And of course, it has the right graphics card to get the best out of the software. So if you want to go up a level, you can have a system that can handle, it's essentially the same thing, but a more powerful machine that can handle up to 10 typical users in a clinical situation. So otherwise, it's exactly the same as the version we showed you before. Now, if you go up another level, we have a small application server, LX. Now, the LX indicates that we have a Linux system attached to do your DICOM communication, and you can also have some storage facility within that. It separates out the applications layer, which is this top box, from the data layer, which is this bottom box here. The small application server can handle up to 10 typical users. Again, it distributes the distributes the software via a thin client mechanism using remote desktop or Citrix environment that you have in the trust again. And all the data management, data layer, all the DICOM communications, data storage, it happens on a separate server, which you can have. You can also purchase a secondary server as a passive spare, effectively, that you could bring on board. It keeps it in sync using an overnight backup from one to the other, and then you can bring that back up online if you need to. And the advantage with this is that it's expandable. So you could start off with this, and you could add additional licenses, additional concurrent users by having more servers at the top here, and you can add storage. So we can add different storage boxes. So you can take this up to 120 terabytes or more, for example. We've configured it when we're making sales quotations to have different levels, and then the next level, which could be an upgrade of the one I'm just showing you, is the medium application server, where we have 2 application servers at the top, where that can support up to 20 concurrent users. It also has a high availability facility here, because those 2 servers work together as part of a server farm, effectively. So the load is balanced between the 2, which is an advantage when you're doing a lot of processing. But also, if you lose one of those servers, the other one will still be there to be used. Again, it needs the infrastructure within your IT to support that remote desktop or Citrix environment to support both of these. And on the lower layer here, we still have this data layer facility as well. And again, if we go up another level, this is for a large department where you have, say, 40 concurrent users. Again, you have high availability, because here we have 4 application servers all working together to spread the load of different users between different physical machines, and also to act as effectively providing redundancy should any one of those systems fail. And again, the data layer is the same, so that can be expanded as is required. Now, there's a lot of involvement here for the local IT department, because obviously when you're looking at a system like this, it is integrated into your hospital. So you do have to discuss things with your IT at an early stage, so they understand how this is going to work. And, do they have this remote desktop infrastructure or Citrix infrastructure that's required? So it can be quite a daunting task sometimes. So if you involve us early in the process to discuss these options with your IT department, that's always very helpful. One of the ways to possibly simplify this is to have this type of facility, or the ones that I've showed you earlier, not on site, to actually have them off site somewhere. or to maybe you may have a question about virtualization. Now, the problem with virtualization is that, in other words, can we use this on hospital hardware, a server farm you already have? It depends on the graphics capability, because as I mentioned before, the graphics capability is key to the performance of a lot of our software, the advanced software. And while when we provide hardware, then obviously we can provide the right specification, or we could provide the specifications for your IT so they can buy their own boxes that are the same, but we can't virtualize on any old servers that you have in the department. So that may be a little bit restrictive sometimes. So you may want to have this offsite. So you don't have any of the hassle of having this within your own IT infrastructure. And we can do that by moving these solutions, such as the smart application server that I mentioned before, or even the full large application server where you have the whole department as Hermes facility, nuclear medicine and PET reporting, all based in the cloud, off premises. And that will be the subject of the next talk in this series that we've got this afternoon. And I'd like to introduce to you Simon Hayes from BCN Group. And BCN Group provide us with our cloud infrastructure. So if it's okay, Helena, if we could switch over to Simon.
Yes, I have made Simon the presenter.
Hi, Simon.
Yes, there
Hello.
Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hi.
Yeah, can you see me okay?
Yes.
Great stuff. Right, now let me just sort my machine out. There we are. Okay, can you see that all right?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thanks, Steve. I'm Simon Hayes. I'm head of hosted services at Cloud Specialist BCN. I'm based up in Liverpool, and I'm going to take us through really the challenges and rewards of implementing a cloud strategy and how this has been applied to Hermes Medical Solutions and the initiative that Steve just mentioned. So really, the first thing to say is that every day we use significant amounts of data. Now let me see, can I see my presentation? There we are. It's hidden away behind. There we go. Obviously, the way we're doing things today, we're using technology to, well, during the lockdown in particular, change the way we work forever by the looks of it. I'm going to be avoiding traveling on the M62 a lot more than I used to. And, you know, using virtual meetings like this or interacting with our GP, we're using technology all the time. And it's made a really positive difference to our lives. Now, I think when it comes to, say, firing up a Zoom call or a virtual meeting like this, we don't actually worry about what's happening going on behind the scenes, or, you know, if we throw a light switch, we don't worry about where the electricity is being generated and how it's done. We're just expecting it all to work. And it's the same for a cloud service. Every time we use a cloud service, like with Apple or Google or Amazon, data's collected and they create a profile for you, and you know there's a single version of it all, and they use it to influence your spending and push additional services to you. So they really do know where you are and what you're up to. So one of the questions we've got is, how can we apply this data capture and analysis through technology to the health sector, and how can we ensure that all of the data that we collect about a citizen or a patient is used for the good of their health and wider society? Well, obviously this is a big nut for the government to crack, but it sets some clear objectives, and that's to give care professionals, whoever you are, access to all the data regarding a person's health and care plans, and it should be up to date and available in real time with just one version of the truth, as we call it. And it is a big ask, isn't it? Ultimately, it's the availability and the value of this data which is going to improve the outcomes for citizens of today and the services for tomorrow.
Simon,
So,
sorry, can I interrupt? Can I just ask, is your slide deck supposed to be moving to different slides? I'm only seeing the first one at the moment.
let me have a look. There, how's that? There we go.
That's better, yeah, thank
Fantastic.
you. Thanks.
Fantastic. Okay. So, standardization of I2 platforms has been key, and I guess one that's been talked about a lot today already is the DICOM standard for digital imaging and communication in medicine. So as manufacturers adopted the standard, the sharing of data between systems was, it was instantly enabled, really, and there's been significant benefits for everyone, including Hermes. And that's exactly what's happened with the cloud. Standards have been developed and adopted to aid integration, data sharing, and the rapid adoption of new services. And the availability of these extremely powerful computing platforms, like Amazon, etc., have been accelerated and adopted. Allowed the adoption of new ideas and techniques. And it's caused us to ask the questions, why can't these same technologies and platforms be used to also process and share data in the health sector? So, I mean, one of the things that I've certainly discovered over the years is that despite the fact that, GPs' practices are significantly digitized and most social care providers have adopted digital record systems, hospital systems largely remain silos of data that are difficult to access externally. So the challenge for us all, and the challenge for the future, is how do we join up all of this data for the patient and care professionals alike, so that we've all got access to relevant data in real time. Now, the spine, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, it's a great example of a successful service that's run by NHS Digital, which holds the summary care records, and it's the go-to service for validating, your name and address, your GP, and all of that. And at BCM, we host two widely used systems. One's for social care called Broadcare, and the other is for patients and GPs called Ask My GP. And both use the spine extensively to validate a patient's key data. So what I'm getting around to is, how do we develop our own, cloud strategy for our business or organization? Well, NHS Digital have recognized the potential of the cloud and asked you to consider solutions for the cloud first before implementing them your own. So think, say, phone system. Yep, sounds good. Why would you buy a phone system for your building when you could just plug a phone in and just use it over the internet? Similarly, video conferencing now, it's so easy to use. But perhaps a system that contains a lot of patient data, maybe not so sure about that. There are really a lot of advantages in a coherent, and I use the word pragmatic, cloud strategy and developing that. And I'm thinking giving care professionals access to all the data and the information they need when they need it. Well, yeah, that sounds great. Bringing life-saving treatments forward for the patients. Well, obviously, yes, please. And assuring best value for your budget. Well, I certainly, like the idea of that. So being pragmatic, we need to be confident in the security of the personal data and to trust the IT professionals who run the platforms to be able to look after it properly. And we also need to be able to trust the integrity of the systems to such a degree that you're 100% confident that the data you are looking at is correct and up to date. So developing your own cloud strategy involves being pragmatic and thinking about value, speed, openness, and security. And if you've got those at the forefront of your mind, then there's lots of benefits. So let's have a look. Now, I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the Nhs strategy of cloud first. So they're 100% behind this approach. And the question for you is, how can the cloud be used safely with its built-in scalability, availability, and with the complexity hidden from you so you don't have to worry about it? And it's there and it's waiting to be used. It's also important to note that this cloud-first strategy addresses the requirement for a speedy deployment so that once the decision is made to proceed, you don't have to wait to procure infrastructure nor need to have the skills in-house to set it all up. The idea is, you know, like any cloud service, you sign up and subscribe and away you go. So there's a potential cost savings of no upfront capital costs, minimal setup costs, and no requirement for dedicated high-skilled staff or your own data centers. You know, talking of data centers, there's that sustainability angle as well, because cloud data centers are significantly more efficient in the way that they use electricity. But of course, in saying that, it is a big dirty secret within the IT world that just how much electricity the cloud uses. And seriously, you know, Google uses more electricity than some very large countries. And we want you to be able to access your system securely from anywhere with the likes of multi-factor authentication and have 24 access support. And ideally, to facilitate this joining up, you should be able to use your existing credentials to getting into all of your systems, and have 24-hour support as well, someone that you can call. Of course, moving to the cloud, there shouldn't be any compromises on performance. We don't want to be making excuses just because your application is cloud-based. A cloud solution should be part of the objective for the joined up view of the patient across all systems, whether that be the GP or the hospital or care services. And I think it's fair to say we are getting there. So cloud services are typically split into two categories of public or private cloud. And public clouds are things like, you know, the telephony services or email encryption, and private cloud typically is the go-to for a platform where you're going to be containing patient identifiable data, such as what we're talking about with the GOLDWeb service. So when you're considering cloud first, there's a number of key aspects that I'd like you to consider that are really important. And firstly, around cybersecurity and information governance. Where will the data be hosted and who will be looking after it? And how is it protected? The answers you're looking for are really quite simple. It should be hosted here, looked after by a team here, and one that is independently certified to the ISO 27001 standard and Cyber Essentials Plus. So standards are important as they determine the information and security management procedures that the cloud provider should be following and is independently audited to be doing so. So that's really important. And next, of course, the commercial arrangements. It should be priced based on consumption. So the amount of IT resources that are used, storage, processing capability and capacity, availability, numbers of users, licenses, and we call this the SaaS model, so the software as a service model. And the service should represent great value for money using the simple metrics of total cost of ownership, cost of onboarding and offboarding. And the nature and basic features of the cloud service should mean that it's more cost effective and reliable than trying to do it all yourself in-house. And one thing also to keep an eye out for is any overage charges that may mount up unexpectedly, you know, like we used to have on our mobile phones. And then finally, when the contract ends and if circumstances change for you and or the cloud provider, how will you get your data back? That's another important point to bear in mind. So there are some justifiable reasons for not using the public cloud. Indeed, the advice that's given regarding digital services and whether to what you should do is you should move to the public cloud unless there is a clear reason not to do so. So things like service delivery times generally can't be met by the public cloud. You know, the SLA for Microsoft's Azure and online services, I think, is just 99%. And also there's things like the recovery time objective and recovery point objective. So how long would it take you to recover your cloud services in the event of a failure or data loss? And could you choose a point in time to recover to? So you should be looking for your cloud provider to be able to do this for you and to be able to demonstrate that they can do it, you know, at least annually, to keep your mind at rest, and that it would cover something like a recovery to an alternative data center with no data loss. And then there's the cyber and information governance. It's hard to see those being met on the public cloud because of the Data Protection Act of 2018 and the UK's implementation of GDPR. So where will the data be hosted? Who's looking after it? How is it protected? And the cloud provider should be able to demonstrate compliance in, you know, in a transparent way. So really, to finish off, this just brings me to how all of this applies to Hermes and the GOLDWeb journey, if you like. So a couple of years ago, Hermes recognized that that there would be a requirement for their solutions to be offered as a cloud service for certain categories of customer, and also to address the NHS cloud first strategy, which was starting to gain traction. So Hermes approached me at BCN Group, as we got this, you know, a proven track record of delivering private cloud solutions to the NHS and in the private health sector, and they've been doing that for many years, I think 10 years, something like that. And we've got the necessary HSCN connections at the Manchester data centres, and we're also ISO 27001. So there were some big ticks there. In terms of our size, well, we're about 200 staff across Manchester and Leeds, 4 data centres. So we're a good size to be able to, you know, cope with the requirements of Hermes. And we've got the technical expertise to help with the strategic and tactical move to cloud services, and we do the 24/7 support. So if you're interested, you'll find us on the, you know, on the G Cloud digital marketplace. So working together, we've been able to develop a solution which would have a zero footprint for the Hermes customers, but it's still, you know, scalable and robust and secure, available from any time, any place, anywhere. Sounds like a Martini advert, doesn't it, from the 1970s? We've also wanted the onboarding process to be as fast as possible, with secure transfers of data over the HSCN network, and be able to scale as required. So most importantly for customers new and old, you know, we want to create a transparent costing model for the hosting element based on the amount of data and number of users, and give you the option really to migrate to this private cloud version of GOLDWeb, if not now, then in the future. So exactly the same software and experience, just from a different platform provided by Hermes and BCN. And you know, I'm delighted to confirm that we've been able to complete this setup last year, and we've got new customers on and all the rest of it. And hopefully we're going to reproduce the platform elsewhere in other regions, so that the work that Hermes and BCN have successfully done together in the UK can benefit customers worldwide. So that's it from me. I hope you found this interesting, and happy to take any questions at the end after Jamie's talk.
That's great. Thank you very much, Simon, for that, to put everything in perspective. So really nice to see the thinking behind the cloud first strategy and how we can apply some of that within the NHS structure. So I'm now going to hand over to Jamie Wright, who will explain how we've actually brought this about in Hermes to provide a cloud solution. So here you go, Jamie. After you.
Thanks, Steve. Have I got the right screen on?
Yeah, that looks perfect.
Good, thanks. Okay, so now Simon's given a bit of an overview of the direction in general for the cloud first strategy of the NHS. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on exactly how we implement that from a Hermes point of view, kind of bring it back a bit closer to the current solutions that we have, and maybe hopefully things will make a bit more sense. And so for those who don't know me, I'm Jamie Wright. I'm the current UK operations lead for Hermes. So our cloud platform, this new offering, is what we call GOLDWeb. And as a start, just to kind of take things right back to the start, I think we should kind of first address what we mean by the cloud in this context. There's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of acronyms, software as a service, microservices, edge computing, private cloud versus public cloud, like Simon was talking about. And I think it's important to just kind of drill down on exactly what we mean, what terms we're meaning when we talk about how our implementation has been designed. So the first thing when we say in the cloud, what we're referring to is Hermes applications, services and patient data running and being stored in private data centers in the UK. So like Simon was saying, there's public cloud versus private cloud, and you might have heard of some of the big public cloud providers like Amazon's AWS, Microsoft Azure, for example, where the services are running in data centers hosted by those companies. Everything goes back to hardware at some point. It's just where that hardware is sitting. But for this initial implementation, we first wanted the security and the stability of knowing exactly where our systems are running and what they're running on. So we felt it was important in making that initial design to go with a private cloud, a data center that isn't one of the big public cloud providers. And as Simon touched on, there is reasons for that in terms of uptime and scale and security. It was an important initial design decision because at that stage, NHS Digital had this requirement of cloud. They were going for this cloud first strategy, but they also said that your data and services must reside in UK-based locations. And now this has widened in recent years to kind of European Economic Area. But now with Brexit, we don't as yet know how information governance policy might be enacted in future. So here is a photo of the actual data center. And something that Steve touched on. So this cloud implementation and kind of cloud in general has this reliance and this implementation of virtual servers. So like I said, everything goes back to hardware at the base level. But virtual servers, to give that a bit of an explanation. So rather than installing an operating system directly onto a piece of base hardware, first an intermediary layer is installed known as a hypervisor. And then your particular server OS is installed on top of that. And this has the benefit of abstracting away that layer, that dependency of the hardware and the particular OS. And in effect means you can have multiple different servers hosted on the same underlying hardware. And this gives a number of benefits that I'll touch on in a minute. But one of the major ones is by abstracting this hardware away from the server operating system, so abstracting the hardware and the software, changes can be made to that hardware without affecting the uptime of the service. So keeping the server running and the hardware up to date. A third thing that when we go into cloud to discuss is how do you get to it? So again, the initial direction from NHS Digital was cloud first, and that really meant over this HSCN, which is the Health and Social Care Network. That again has widened now to an internet first strategy. So your services should be available anywhere you have an internet connection. So we can do both of that, and I'll touch on that further in a minute. And the final thing I think is important to get at the ground level is this isolation from other tenants. So to give a kind of a counter example, something like Facebook as a cloud, where everyone is kind of lumped into a large system, one large database, and then everyone's data is accessible by the company as a start. But for health data, patient information, patient identifiable data, we have the design where each of the installations are logically isolated from all other installations. We keep different sites, applications, and data separated from each other logically by virtual firewalls and individual virtual servers for each customer. So that kind of touches on what we mean by the cloud. So why pursue this other than NHS Digital have kind of made this as a strategy? One of the kind of first things is that this reduced IT footprint, this reduced digital footprint. There's no local hardware required, no local hosting space or charges. All that we require is an HSCN connection, a connection to the HSCN network, which is all trusts have an access onto this health and social care network for across the NHS. And we just require a Citrix receiver, so something to connect to the cloud solution. And a benefit of that is that there's no waiting for servers to be delivered and deployed. So we've seen in the last year what happens when supply chains break down. Lead times for installations and upgrades increase. And there's less liaising with IT for these projects as well. Again, IT have been swamped as we move to this remote working environment. So getting them to prioritize anything not related to the main business can be difficult. And by having everything, reducing your on-site data footprint, it means that we as a Hermes are in control of the whole environment. So we know what changes have been applied to the management infrastructure and whether that will affect our applications. Nothing's changed in the environment without it first being tested that does it affect the Hermes applications themselves. So a second benefit is a robustness. So I talked about virtual servers and the benefit of that, and this is a kind of a graphic to kind of go over this again. So in the graphic there, like I was saying, we have this base layer of hardware, physical servers at the bottom, and then we have this hypervisor layer installed first of all on the top of that. And then the servers, like your GOLDWeb server, your application server, are installed as software on the top of that. And what that means is that we have this concept of high availability. the hypervisor layer can monitor the underlying hardware, and by abstracting that server away from the hardware, any faults detected on the base hardware can lead to an automatic move of the server to another server, another piece of hardware in the data center, and then that faulty hardware can be fixed without it bringing down the service. So that leads to an increase in the uptime. The fault detection and monitoring is much higher because, again, we are in control of the whole environment. So it doesn't take IT to tell us that something's down. We first get we can be more proactive in how we keep the service running. As well as having this data center, it's a UK-based data center, so we have a pair of replicated data centers in the UK just outside Manchester. So there's full replication of them, so you get a full kind of disaster recovery. If in the unlikely event that full data center went down, then we can move to the second one. And it's scalable. So all of those different environments that Steve talked about, we can replicate as virtual services in the cloud and in this GOLDWeb environment. But we can also scale that on a much finer grained it's easily expandable as your requirements demand. If you get more staff, if you add more applications, like if you didn't have hybrid recon or affinity, as your resource requirements are increased, so can the resources that are applied to the virtual servers by taking more resources from the underlying hardware. And to give an example with the kind of data management option I've got here, one example that I'm sure a lot of you have come across is reaching the limit of your storage capacity before the end of a current service contract. So at some stage, we do reach the physical limit of how many disks we can actually insert into your on-site server chassis. And at that point, we're in this situation where we're moving data, or we're getting into that situation we don't want to get into, where we're deleting old data. So by having, again, these virtual machines, we can take more storage capacity and just add it to that service without affecting any of the uptime of the service. And the final, probably maybe most important benefit of this cloud migration is security. So with kind of thick client implementations, smart workstations and things like that, we have data, patient data at a user desktop, where that desktop device can be picked up and taken out of a department. All of our data in the cloud is encrypted, and any data in transit going over HSCN, we encapsulate in a point-to-point VPN as well, so the data is encrypted as it's moving as well. And this meets all the kind of information governance requirements that we're likely to come across. So this is my most detailed slide, and I could probably go for 20 minutes just on this slide alone. But just briefly, this is kind of how a tenant would be is set up and supported by us. So you guys are in the top left in the hospital. Users coming in via Citrix over HSCN, and the modality sending data on a VPN over HSCN. Hermes support staff, like I said, we can access this platform via internet as well as HSCN, and we come over the internet to provide maintenance and support of the service. And we do that in a two-factor authenticated way with mobile phone authenticated tokens as well as user passwords. So the presentation tier, you hit your Citrix storefront. Then we have an application layer which would represent your application servers in the application server solutions that Steve was talking about. And then we have our GOLDWeb data tier. And as well as having what we would put in an on-premises installation, we also have the management and authentication servers in the environment as well. So do the domain control do the identity management, like for your usernames and passwords. So we control the environment, the updates and things. So it's a more secure, holistic implementation. But really, to abstract all that away, really all you guys want to know is how, like Simon was saying, you just want to be able to get to it. So you can access it via a web browser, a Citrix Workspace app, or we can work with IT to get it deployed as an icon in your start menu or a desktop icon of just any standard NHS PC. So a case study of one of the hospitals that we've worked on in this, Lincolnshire Hospitals. So this was a free hospital. This is a free hospital site. The hardware was starting to age. We had Windows 7 workstations, so the data was cached on those workstations. The servers are tower servers running Solaris that sit in the department. There was multiple workstations to be kept in sync. So then you can kind of see where I've been going with this about keeping the hardware up to date. The security of not having a box in the department with patient data on it that's unencrypted, and having this future-proof by going down the strategy of NHS Digital. So quickly, just to finish, I'm going to try a demo here. So that is a shot I took of the clouds outside Glasgow, outside my office yesterday. And it wasn't just to show off the Glasgow skyline, it's to kind of just so we think about what's happening here. I'm sitting in Glasgow, the data centre's in Manchester, and then wherever you are in the world, you'll be seeing the video feed effectively. So if I run up this, go to this demo server platform that we have, and this is accessible. If you want to try out the platform. There's no point, rather than me driving this, and I'm not an application specialist. You can get your hands on it yourself and see how things run. But I'll just try and not click too many wrong buttons and see if we can
really
get
good, Jamie.
on.
I'm seeing it all. I'm seeing Affinity loading now.
You can see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, that's good.
Nice.
Okay. I don't want to push my luck too much here because I know you're watching me like a hawk here to see if I push the wrong buttons here.
Oh, it's perfect.
So, like I said, I'm not an application specialist, but I think you might be able to see that, or you might find it difficult to see that service isn't running in a server in your hospital basement. So that's running in Manchester, being controlled from Glasgow and being delivered to wherever you guys are in the world. So I think I'll not push my luck too much. I think I'll leave it there and just leave that spinning. So that's me.
That's great. Thanks very much, Jamie. That's a really good demonstration of the potential of the cloud. And Helena, I don't know, I don't see any questions on this so far from the audience. Do you?
I can't see anything either. No.
Okay. If that's the case, what I think we should do, as we're a little bit tight for time, because I went over a bit, I do apologise, is to just cover the last 3 or 4 slides quickly between myself and my colleague Ben Clarke. And so, Helen, if you could make me a presenter again,
Yeah,
I will.
there you go.
Thank you very much. And I'll just make sure I got this launched. Okay. And right, hopefully you should see a screen with a clock on it. Is that right, Helena?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Okay,
Did you show your videos too? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, there we go. Right, so so I wanted to let you know about some new services that we have at Hermes this year. The first of these is our out-of-hours emergency support service, which you can add to an existing service contract. What this does is to increase the hours of support for those emergency cases, such as if your system goes down or needs a restart, or maybe there's a licensing issue or something, that you can't actually use the system at all. And you know, when this happens, it's quite often like 5 p.m. on a Friday or something, or it might be at 8 a.m. When you just get in and you're just doing the QC on the systems. So this is to provide that level of support. So it wouldn't be application support, apart from some specialist applications which have ones that are important for acute services, such as lung spec VQ. So lung spec VQ application software we would cover in those times, but it's really intended for if the system's down, you're thinking, hey, I'd like to get the system up and running. So there is an extra cost for it, but it can be added on to an existing service level agreement, and we have it already in place in Queen's Hospital in Romford. And if you take a look at the newsletter, there are some words there from the hospital, from Karen Gannon there, who has used this service already. So if you'd like to know a little bit more, please do contact myself and Ben about that. Because working practices are changing, have had to change, obviously, in the last year or so. And it looks like, with the uncertainties in the way the situation is going to go forward in future, and also just because people have got used to working at home, I think home working is here to stay, or remote working is here to stay. And we just wanted to say that with the Hermes solutions that we have in place, whether they're on premises or whether they're in the cloud, they are well aligned with being able to carry out your Hermes work at home. So if you do not have that facility currently, or is not working particularly well currently, then please do contact us, because I'm sure there is something that we can do to assist with that, either using your existing platform or a small upgrade to the platform, or having a provision on the cloud so that you can carry on with your work wherever you are. So I just wanted to mention that aspect. Now, if I can get the slides to work for the last couple of slides, and Ben, if you're there, I don't know if you can come online. You'd need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah. So
okay. You could give access to the camera as well if you wanted to.
I think you have to do that yourself, actually.
Do I? Okay. Okay, it seems a little bit more involved than I thought, so let's not do that. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just go ahead as I am. Okay, apologies. I did have a slightly more interesting visual aid to look at for everybody, but unfortunately my my laptop got stuck in transit after it was rebuilt. So we've gone with a backup version, but I'm sure the point will still come across. So any of you that have any level of sort of management responsibilities, I imagine, within the departments might be aware of how difficult it is to get hold of non-budgeted funding for sort of medium to large purchases, such as Hermes software or any major hardware. With this in mind, it's always the ideal time to plan a Hermes purchase alongside a larger piece of scanning equipment, such as a SPEC CT or a PET CT. And that's for either a Hermes new purchase, upgrade, or an expansion. The NHS procurement processes obviously can be quite long-winded, and in our experience, it's probably anything from 6 months up to 18 months or even 2 years. So rolling the two into one really is a good use of your time also. Now, the NHS supply chain is quite a popular go-to-market these days for gamma cameras and for PET CT scanners. And although Hermes isn't available on NHS supply chain, it is very easy to request that the manufacturers include the Hermes configuration of your choosing when you put in for one of these new cameras. Therefore, it's really important to come and speak to us at an early part of that process, and we can help you decide exactly what would benefit you, so that you know exactly what to ask the manufacturers to include within their offer. Now, there are additional benefits to this, as well as rolling the two procurements into one. It could well mean that you have a saving, or there is no need for the manufacturer's own workstation. You can also, it completely opens up your choice to any manufacturer's camera, because we are a fully vendor neutral solution. Often with superior software options that can even be lower cost option than those from the manufacturers. The additional benefit is that you can then use any of these new software applications throughout your system installations for various cameras that you may have, rather than just for the new one. As I said, that really does give you the freedom to pick the camera based on the merits of the actual scanning hardware, rather than being tied down to a particular manufacturer's software. Next slide, please, Steve. Okay. The other main point, I suppose, to consider is that a new spec CT or PET CT for many departments might completely alter the demands on the current system. And with this in mind, Hermes can certainly scale to a new infrastructure, both in terms of concurrent users and in terms of storage requirements, which are both likely to increase while you add infrastructure to the department. Another level to this is that you could be open to include something like the new Affinity Viewer as a next generation, more powerful multimodality viewing tool to further streamline the PET CT and spec CT reporting within the department. Again, there's no need to purchase the manufacturer's expensive quantitative spec option, for example. In the case of, in our case, we have Hermes Hybrid Reconstruction SUV, which is completely camera independent and would offer a consistent quantitative spec option across all your spec CT cameras, and additionally for all commonly used radionuclides. So certainly worth getting in touch with us at an early stage of any new camera procurement processes, because certainly more efficient way to include Hermes in that procurement. Separating it out can be very, very tricky, and you know, we have experience with many of our customers where things can really drag on, and you end up with perhaps an aging system in terms of hardware, and really keen to move on to some of the newer Hermes applications, and procurement can put a halt to that. So please just keep talking to us, keep in touch, and let us know what's going on, and I'm sure we'll be able to help out. Okay, thanks, Steve.
Great, thanks very much then, Ben. And yeah, thank you everybody for your attendance today, and also for to our speakers for their excellent talks. And I'm afraid there is no physical dinner provided, as I said before, but we do wish you all a good virtual nice dinner this evening, and I hope you can join us tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Using the separate registration you would need to do, and we'll start off tomorrow by going through the Affinity Viewer software that Ben just mentioned, and then we have a range of talks again on nuclear medicine, lung imaging, neurology, and dosimetry tomorrow. So another fun-packed day. So thanks again very much for your attention, everybody, and have a good evening, and see you tomorrow.